Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
I thought I was going to die. I really thought I was going to die.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes
Run, it's gonna blow.
to mad moments and highway robbery
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
to highway landings.
Holy...
It's definitely something they don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
And we reveal exclusive footage new to television. So keep your seatbelt fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, a terrifying mid-air smash 12,000 feet over Wisconsin.
Like a war zone in the sky. You have shrapnel everywhere, you have metal everywhere, you have people everywhere.
The sickening end to a sky-high love pact.
Not many girls get to say they got proposed to up in the air. I thought that would be romantic.
And the horror of engine failure over Australia's shark-infested western seas.
I lifted the window shade and all I could see was water, and so at that point I thought, we're definitely going to die.
November 2011, New Jersey, the United States of America. Boxing promoter Greg Cohen is on his way to Moscow via Warsaw for a world title fight. It's an evening departure from Newark Airport. And business as usual for the seasoned air traveler.
Routine check-in, got on the plane, everything was going according to plan, smooth takeoff, just another day at the office.
On the same flight is New York resident Alexander Ryshkar, on a mercy mission to visit his seriously ill brother in their native Poland.
Last-minute flight was from Newark, which I bought a ticket and get on. It was good weather, everything was perfect.
Because we're flying to Europe, it's a night flight. You pretty much try to sleep on those kind of flights.
It seems like a routine takeoff from Newark Airport for the 221 passengers. But there is a critical malfunction to the control system which lowers the Boeing 767's wheels.
They suffered a center hydraulic pressure failure. However, it didn't affect the capability of being able to fly a long-distance flight. The captain decided to continue the flight on to Warsaw because if they had to go back into Newark, it would have meant dumping lots of fuel.
Unaware the plane's undercarriage mechanism has failed, Greg sleeps peacefully as flight Lot 16 crosses the Atlantic. He wakes up about 2 hours before the scheduled arrival in Warsaw and soon realizes that there may be a problem.
You just kept seeing the flight attendants walking back and forth toward the cockpit and looking, a little nervous. And you could see it was like not normal commotion, there was a sense that something may be wrong.
The captain alerts the flight's destination airport, Warsaw Chopin, that the main system for lowering the aeroplane's wheels has failed. Wojtek Rohodzinski is the duty officer, the man with ultimate responsibility for preparing the airport for a potential emergency landing of the aircraft and its unsuspecting passengers.
The pilot reported an issue regarding the plane's landing gear.
As the plane gets closer to Warsaw, the pilot tries to lower the landing gear using the backup system. This should allow the wheels to drop under their own weight.
Went to make approach, got to the normal position where they would drop the gear by using manual freefall, the alternate system. Unfortunately, the gears didn't come down.
Both undercarriage deployment mechanisms have now failed.
The issue is bigger than expected and calls for an emergency action plan.
The clock is ticking as the 221 passengers on Flight 16 face the terror of an emergency landing in a near 200-ton plane without any wheels. November 2013, a beautiful autumn day in North Wisconsin. Dozens of skydivers have been jumping safely throughout the day at the Richard I. Bong Airport on the outskirts of the city of Superior. As the sun starts to set, 9 of the most experienced skydivers gather for one last run. Amy Ebling, a veteran of nearly 500 jumps, joins a 2-plane formation skydive.
There's a lot more risk involved when you're flying 2 planes simultaneously and trying to coordinate 4 jumpers in the lead plane, 5 jumpers in the chase plane, getting everyone out to exit at the same time, but then also coming together and having that many people in the air. So we reserve this sunset load, this formation load, just for experienced jumpers to really get one last good jump in for the day. And at sunset over Lake Superior, it's absolutely stunning.
Amy and her fiancé Chad are in the trail plane, which follows behind the lead plane, keeping that aircraft and its jumpers in clear sight.
As we were preparing to exit the aircraft and jump, we were flying at about 12,000 feet, which is pretty typical for the drop zone.
Mike Robinson is in the lead plane, which is usually about 100 feet in front of Amy's trail plane.
So we were just taking our position. My 3 partners were already totally out of the airplane when the trail plane came over the top and hit us.
Everything happened very quickly.
After the collision, Amy's plane explodes into flames.
It was just very confusing. This is Chad's video. Like, that's me. My pilot screams, "Go! Get out of the plane now." That's his blood-curdling scream. So I didn't hesitate. I pulled myself out as fast as I could. We didn't know we were upside down either until we watched Johnny's video. It sends chills down my spine to this day.
We could hear the propellers kind of chewing into our airplane. As our wing came over, it pinned one of the jumpers. He hung on as long as he could, and then the forces were just too great, and he let go.
Amy and Chad are the last 2 jumpers out of the trail plane, but the sky they have escaped into is now a place of deadly menace.
It was like a war zone in the sky. You have 2 planes that just collided. You have shrapnel everywhere. You have metal everywhere. You have pieces on fire. You have people everywhere. You have to make sure that not only do you get far enough away from the plane crash and the debris, but also that you have clean airspace to open your parachute.
All of the skydivers from Mike's plane escape from the burning wreck, but the pilot is still trapped inside as it hurtles towards the ground.
All that was left was the fuselage. It's got nothing to hold it up. It's just going straight to the ground. The pilot of our airplane, he is wearing an emergency parachute. And if you look at the videos really close, you can just see a little speck coming out the door at the same time the left wing came off. So that's the time he left the aircraft.
Amy is counting the seconds as she tries to get far enough away to avoid debris from the stricken planes, but still high enough to safely open her chute.
Those were the longest 48 seconds of my entire life. And then what happens when I pull my parachute? Is it gonna work, you know? It's still a normal skydive, so my equipment can still malfunction. It just goes quiet. Their parachute's open. Once my parachute was open, I kind of assessed myself and figured out my equipment's good. Am I good? Can I land? I wasn't to the ground yet. This wasn't over, so I was still very much prepared to fight if I needed to.
As Amy approaches the drop zone, she spots her fiancé amongst the jumpers who have already landed.
Chad was the first one to the ground, and I landed shortly after him and right next to him. And I remembered I was on all fours, and I immediately started sobbing. I was still convinced that I had seen several of my friends die. You know, I didn't know who was where. I didn't know where my pilots were. I didn't know where the debris was. I didn't know where the planes were.
Mike is the last of the skydivers to land, but they still don't know what has happened to the pilot of Amy's trail plane.
I heard this noise up above me, and it was a really odd noise. And I could tell the engine was not running right. I looked up, and it took me a while, but I realized that was our second airplane. Hang in there, Blake. Still flying. Given what happened to our plane, I could not believe he could still fly that airplane.
The skydivers on the ground rush over to be in position to help their friend after he makes his landing.
We grabbed the drop zone truck and piled into the back of it.
Is everybody down?
And flew down to the runway in the truck to make sure that if he needed attention, we were there for him. That one landing had to be the landing. That had to be perfect. And it was. He jokes to this day that it was one of his best landings.
You could not recreate this kind of a crash and have this good of an outcome ever, I don't think. We all feel very fortunate to be alive.
But this near-death experience has done nothing to diminish Amy's passion for her sport.
There was never a question in my mind that I wouldn't skydive again. So the accident didn't change my perspective on skydiving, but it absolutely changed my perspective on life. So it renewed this insane passion to live unapologetically enthusiastic about life.
In fact, when she and fellow survivor Chad finally tie the knot in 2014, there is only one place they would choose to hold their wedding.
Chad and I got married out of a plane. We had a boogie at the drop zone. We called it Till Death Do Us Party. We invited our friends from all over the world. Chad and I kissed for the duration of our free fall, and we broke off, pulled our parachutes safely, and landed. It was kind of like it came full circle. Nice jump.
Flight Lot 16 is circling above Poland with a fast-depleting fuel tank and its undercarriage jammed up. The Boeing 767 suffered a critical malfunction to its central hydraulic system during takeoff from Newark. The landing gear's manual backup then failed as the plane approached Warsaw's Chopin Airport. The Polish authorities scramble F-16 fighters to check what's going on with the wheels beneath the ailing jetliner. The passengers still don't realize the danger they are in.
I noticed a jet right outside the plane. I said, oh my God, I have to take a picture because it's great. You know, he's right next to us, and I had to get up because my camera was in the overhead locker. I picked up the camera. When I sit down, he was gone. I said, oh, too bad. I will have a nice picture of the jet flying next to the regular plane.
The news is not good. The fighters confirm that none of the 767's wheels are down.
The only thing they told us is that we're going to be making an emergency landing. And we kept circling and circling and circling. And, you know, we were literally just waiting for information.
The captain had to burn off as much fuel as possible because obviously he's going to be landing without wheels. There's going to be a lot of sparks and probably flames as well.
Before attempting a life-threatening emergency landing, the captain makes one desperate last effort to lower the wheels.
At one point, the plane lost the engine, and we were like falling down, I got scared. I started thinking, oh my God, it's my time. Thinking about my 2 daughters in New York and my 3 grandchildren in New York. And I shed a few tears.
These sudden descents are actually the pilot attempting to jolt the undercarriage into place.
The only thing they could try to do was to make an up and down sharp movement to the aeroplane to see if they could dislodge it and make it come down. Obviously it was jammed, so it couldn't come down.
The pilot finally announces to the passengers he's been unable to lower the undercarriage. And the plane will be making an emergency landing without any wheels.
It got to the point where I got to reach out to my family. And at that point, you know, I got my cell phone out and I text my wife that we're making an emergency landing. I'm sorry to have to text you this. I love you so much and our children so much, and God forbid if something were to happen, you needed to know. And just in case the wrong thing happened, I wanted my wife and kids to know how much I love them, and it was definitely emotional.
As the pilot prepares for a landing without landing gear, the ground team at Warsaw Chopin Airport moved the fire engines into position and put one final safety measure into place.
We sprayed a layer of foam on the 3-kilometer-long runway.
The plane starts to make its final approach.
As we're coming in, they're giving our instructions and telling us, brace for impact, get ready, get ready, get ready.
Seatbelt fastened. We all were thinking that we're gonna probably crack in half or lose the wings.
I'm just praying that things are going to end up okay.
February 2017, Fresno, California. Daryl Hamilton Jr. and Rihanna Lopez have been together for 3 years. But now he thinks it's time to take the next step. And what better place to pop the question than high above the lush landscape of California's Central Valley.
Rihanna and I really love taking pictures and scenic outdoor shots, and I just thought the perfect view for her would be something memorable. And not many girls get to say they got proposed to up in the air with a nice view, so I thought that would be romantic.
Daryl gets in touch with a pilot at his local airport and arranges a very special flight for the lovebirds. The destination? A sign he will build himself, asking Rihanna to marry him.
We arranged a time and a date and schedule, and I told him if we can fly over that sign. As soon as she sees it, I was going to ask her, and he was very willing to help me.
So, early on the morning of the planned proposal, Daryl sets off to his cousin's house to prepare his man-sized love note to Rihanna.
I kind of carved "Marry Me" in the grass. It was probably the size of like 2 vehicles, so it took me about an hour, hour and a half to make that sign. I took a picture of the sign before I left. I don't know why, but like when I got closer to the house, I kept looking at the sign, and I remember thinking to myself, wait, Mary, instead of M-A-R-R-Y, marry me, I put M-E, and just was thinking, well, maybe she can get a joke out of it, it can be funny. But yeah, I did notice after it was too late that I had spelled Mary wrong.
The whole project hasn't begun very well, but at least the weather's on Daryl's side.
We had a lot of rain, so the landscape was really green. He just said, do you want to go take pictures for the day? And I was like, okay. So we did that, and then all of a sudden he says, hey, there's an airport over here. Let's take some pictures of the plane. And I'm like, okay, that's a little weird, but whatever.
I don't think she had time to be suspicious because it was really last minute. And when we had gotten there, she was really caught off guard, and she really didn't know what to think.
So he started going into the airport, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think we're supposed to be in here. Like, this is not right. And he starts following this guy into the airport, and I'm like starting to get upset because I'm like, we're gonna get in trouble for being in an airport. Finally, I realized that he knows this person, and the guy comes out of his car and he's like, so we're gonna be taking a flight today. And I'm like, wait, I don't understand what's going on. I'm a little confused. We always do random things like that. So I really thought this was like a Valentine's Day gift, and this is what we were just doing.
Video journalist Daryl has rigged the plane with cameras to document every moment of the proposed proposal.
I wanted to capture her reaction once she saw the ring, if she would cry, if she would be in awe.
But novice air passenger Rihanna's first reaction is one of terror.
So this was only like my really second time, plus it was a smaller plane, so it was a little scary. My stomach was kind of in knots a little bit, because I have a little bit of fear of heights. So at first, I just kind of looked straight ahead. And then as soon as we kind of got in the air, when I did look down, it looked so fake that it almost like didn't seem real. So it made me kind of feel more at ease.
Rihanna may be at ease now, but she's in for one of the most sickening moments in aviation history before she gets her feet back safely on the ground again. November 2011, Warsaw, Poland. Polish Airlines flight Lot 16 has been circling over the city for over an hour, attempting to lower its undercarriage. The pilot has now exhausted all options for dropping the landing gear and depleted nearly all the fuel in the aircraft. So the Boeing 767 and its 221 passengers are now making their final approach to the airport.
We're getting closer and closer to the runway. You could see there are fire trucks lining both sides of the runway. There's that white foam that they put on the runway. And you understand the gravity of the situation.
A huge aircraft was approaching with no landing gear. It was hard to imagine how this huge airframe was going to behave.
I'm waiting for this crash. I've been in a car accident before. I'm waiting for this impact.
Will it smash apart when it touches the ground? Or slide gracefully on the foam-covered runway and stop?
Spokojnie pojedzie do przodu I wyhamuje bezpiecznie. It was actually one of the smoothest landings I've ever had.
But the passengers are not out of danger yet.
Słychać było oczywiście po wylądowaniu. We could hear metal rubbing across the surface of the runway.
I see that engines are scraping the runway. There's some sparks coming on and smoke. Then I said, oh, no. We are on the runway with the belly.
The pilot, Tadeusz Wrona, manages to keep the plane on a smooth course through the foam-covered runway, and the flames die down.
The captain has to try and put that aeroplane down very, very gently on both engines, because they're the ones that are going to make contact first at the same time, while keeping the aeroplane straight down the center of the runway. And miraculously, it came to a halt without any flames or any fire. I have to say, he did a fantastic job.
Plane comes to a stop, everybody's cheering. That lasts for a couple of seconds, and you just see these flight attendants, and all of them are saying, "Get off this plane now."
And the people start running. And when I want to get up, somebody always push me back, because boom, I want to get up. Boom, somebody running. And I said, oh my, I finally have to get up and run. Then when I get up and I start running, they said, jump, so I jump. Those guys who were there, they was going, run, it's gonna blow up, run, it's gonna blow up. And it seemed like everybody was running, and I was kind of running too.
You see, you know, all these fire trucks hosing the plane down, and you see everybody coming, and that's when you really realize, like, oh my God, what a close call this really was.
Within 90 seconds, all the passengers were evacuated from the plane. We knew we'd done a good job when all the passengers were safe.
Alec and Greg get far enough away from the plane to take stock of the situation.
I said, oh my God, we are safe. I think I taped it. I said, oh, I'm alive, I'm alive.
The first thing I did after running across the runway to a safe distance away from the plane, I pulled out my cell phone to call my wife. As soon as I heard her voice, I mean, you know, my voice cracked, and you know, it was just an outpouring of emotion and something, you know, it's very hard to describe unless you experience something like that. But it was a great call, you know, and I'm a very lucky man to have such a good family.
The passengers are loaded onto buses and driven to the terminal building.
We are among people who did survive, now happy, shaking hands, hugging, good. That's it. I'm alive.
It definitely keeps things in perspective. You know, you realize, you know, what's important. I mean, I think ice cream tastes a little sweeter. You know, the sunshine feels a little better. You notice the little things, and you don't take them for granted.
June 2017. Perth, Australia. Teachers Damien Stevens and Mitch Jameson are heading off for their mid-year break. The two of them are flying out from Perth Airport to Kuala Lumpur at the start of a holiday in Myanmar, formerly Burma, in Southeast Asia.
I guess we were looking for something a little bit different, not so touristy, and somewhere we could have a bit of an adventure.
Yeah, we were going to go dirty, go cheap, and backpack our way around the country.
They decide to book with low-cost Malaysian-based airline AirAsia.
We thought the less money we spend on an airfare, the more money we can spend in country.
It's an early start after a late night for party animal Mitch.
We got to the airport about 4 in the morning. And yeah, when we got our boarding passes, went up for a coffee and just couldn't wait to get on the plane.
Like a lot of passengers, they don't listen to the pre-flight emergency instructions, as no doubt they should have.
You'd heard the safety briefing a million times before, so I mean, no one ever listens to it. So I was out like a light.
The Airbus 330 makes a routine takeoff from Perth en route to Malaysia and cruises up the western coast of Australia. But after only about 60 minutes, disaster strikes.
So I was in a pretty deep sleep, and there was a massive bang.
It was like nothing I've ever really experienced. I guess the closest thing I'd say it was like being right next to fireworks or something like that, like a really loud bang.
I looked around and everyone else was kind of looking around with quite panicked looks on their faces. The pilot wanted to lose a bit of altitude straight away, so that added to the sensation of that we were going to crash and we were probably going to die.
After the initial explosion, a stomach-churning vibration kicks in.
And straight away the shaking started, and it felt like you were sort of sitting on top of a washing machine or a compressor.
It was really loud, we couldn't talk, we had to yell at each other, and even when you spoke it was that violent, it would like move your voice as you were speaking as well.
The bone-shaking rattle is the result of a catastrophic failure to the left-hand engine.
It suffered a fracture of one of the turbine blades, which was ingested into the engine. The pilots immediately shut the engine down and started a descent. The shaking of an engine can cause considerable damage. In the case of the AirAsia X aircraft, the hydraulic system and the oil system detached from the engine itself, so it is a very serious issue.
And, chillingly for the 359 passengers on board, the plane is over open water in an area known as Shark Bay.
Mitch was near the window seat and he lifted the blind and sort of peeked out, and all we could see was oceans. We didn't really talk for about 3 or 4 minutes, I think. We just sort of sat there in silence. We're quite, really, really frightened.
We're both pretty good swimmers, and I thought if we do land it okay, we'll be able to survive the swim. That's not an issue, but knowing that we'll be floating in water full of sharks for at least a couple of hours was a pretty big concern.
Typically, it is far safer to ditch in the ocean, if you can. However, the seas off Western Australia are notorious for the great white shark, with many fatalities over the last 4 or 5 years. So ditching at sea does come with some perils.
Mitch and Damien are 20,000 feet above the ocean off Western Australia. One engine of their plane has already failed. The other is struggling to keep the Airbus and the 2 teachers safely above the shark-infested waters. Photojournalist Daryl Hamilton Jr. has come up with an elaborate plan to pop the question to his girlfriend Rihanna Lopez. He made a sign asking her to marry him and then chartered a plane to fly her over his unfortunately misspelt love letter. It's only Rihanna's second time in a plane, but she's really getting into it. Daryl, on the other hand, is a bit overwhelmed by all the tech he has rigged to document his planned proposal.
Instead of just enjoying the moment, I was trying to capture it all, and just being on those gadgets is what really messed with me.
You could start to see the color kind of drain from his face, and so I did keep asking him, are you okay? Are you okay? And he just kept saying, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, okay, yeah, but you could definitely tell he wasn't feeling good at all.
But everything still seems to be going to plan. All that is needed is Daryl's "Marry Me" sign.
What was going through my head was to hurry up and find the sign. So I was focusing on just trying to be steady. I remember closing my eyes and focusing for a minute. I was just really trying to hold it in as long as I could to keep myself together so I can ask Rihanna to marry me. Yeah, so after about 15 minutes on the plane ride, the pilot and I kind of linked eyes when we got closer, and he was kind of hinting at me, like winking and telling me, all right, we're here. So I kind of tried to hint her and say, hey, do you see anything outside? Is there anything out the window?
I didn't see it.
I kept asking, do you see anything? Do you see anything?
No.
And I was just, okay, I don't have time if she can't find it or not. I didn't have time. I grabbed every ounce of strength I could and just said, okay, I can't wait no longer. I just had to get it over with and hand her the ring.
He tapped me on the shoulder and I turned around and it was just right there in my face. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what's happening, I guess. So he immediately went down and started throwing up. So yeah, it was a little, I didn't even know how to react. I was just kind of like, wait, what's going on? You just gave me this ring and now you're, vomiting. So
she never really gave me an answer. I never asked, and she never really said yes. I guess the way I took her answer was just how happy she looked. So I just took that as a yes, really.
Confirmation came when Daryl put the ring on his new fiance's finger. Admittedly, the wrong one.
Yeah, so after I recovered myself, I think I put on her right hand first, and then after a few seconds, wait, wrong hand, and then I remember putting it on her left hand.
He placed it on my finger, and then we kind of did the little finger kiss because he didn't want to kiss me because he had just thrown up. So it was like just a quick little tap with the hands, and that was it, yeah.
And after the rather tentative first contact of their engagement, it's straight back to base and the security of solid Earth.
Well, the pilot asked us if we wanted to continue flying, and Daryl was like, no, can we just get on the ground as soon as possible?
I felt relieved. I felt just happy to be back on my feet, really.
Well, we're getting married soon. We don't have a date quite set yet, but we're definitely planning the wedding, and we'll make it happen.
How do I look back on that day? I guess memorable. Not many people get to say that they got to propose to their girlfriend up in the air. And I guess kind of funny, because not many people have thrown up. It's a funny story to tell, and we get to tell our kids and grandkids and family that, hey, remember when Daryl proposed to Rihanna? It's a good story to tell.
AirAsia Flight D7237 is limping home to Perth on just one engine over the shark-infested waters of Western Australia. Fearing the worst, passengers Damien Stevens and Mitch Jameson start to record what could be their last moments.
I guess I don't really know why we decided to make a little video. I guess a part of you thinks, what if this is the last communication you get? And Damo said that line that when we land, we're going to have 60 million beers, which is how we were both feeling.
Having 50 million beers when we get back.
I guess we sort of did it just to record what may or may not have happened, and also to show people back home what it was like, because the shaking, it was crazy, something like I've never experienced before.
The plane continues its bone-shaking return to Perth Airport. Eventually, the pilot comes over the intercom to share his concerns with the passengers.
I'm sorry about the vibration, there's nothing much I can do.
His announcements over the rest of the flight will only add to the growing panic of his 359 passengers.
I hazard to guess that the number one engine is seized and it's causing the vibration that we are feeling right now.
The pilot, the first thing he announced was that we'd had a technical issue and that we were returning to Perth.
We are going to Perth.
And keep an eye on the engines, and if we saw anything suspicious, to alert the flight crew straight away.
This sets up a fearful 2-hour journey home for the shaken passengers.
I guess with the pilot asking for our help made us feel like, you know, this wasn't going to be an easy trip back, and that something else could definitely go wrong. And that made me wonder how long you could fly with just one engine, especially with that shaking. That must have made the second engine work twice as hard.
Yeah, obviously as soon as the word engine had been mentioned, we were petrified.
Then, about 30 minutes after the left engine failed, it seems the worst has happened.
The plane was shaking from as soon as the engine went, but it almost became sort of comforting, and you got used to the shaking. At one point during the flight back, stopped for about 40 seconds, and for me that was probably the most scary point in the flight.
The passengers on the Airbus fear that the right engine has also seized under the strain of keeping the plane aloft.
Yeah, it was perfectly silent, and everyone else, you know, would look around sideways at each other because no one knew what was going on. So that was quite scary.
Thankfully, the second engine kicks back in and the flight moves back over land, to the great relief of those on board.
I guess when we sort of could see land, we felt a little bit more comfortable, although I don't really know why that was. We thought we could land on the highway in the northwest maybe, but that was our thought process at the time.
And then the captain chips in again with a jaw-dropping intercom appeal.
We had half an hour of shaking at this stage, and I guess we thought, well, we're going to keep going at this rate and shaking the whole time, so we weren't, you know, in a mad panic.
I know you're all worried and back there. Me too.
The pilot came over the intercom and told us we needed to pray.
Let's pray together and make this a good landing for us all.
But for him to ask us to pray, we just thought, just lie to us. Tell us you've done this before. Tell us we're going to get home safe, because if we don't, then we're just going to die.
And I'm praying, I hope you are too.
I guess it spread a bit of panic throughout the plane and people were quite subdued. But he said it twice, and when it came the second time and he said he was scared as well, it was, yeah, we thought we were in a lot of trouble.
Let's hope everything turns for the best. God bless us.
The announcement by the AirAsia ex-captain of asking the passengers to pray was probably the most bizarre request ever made in aviation history. You've got a scenario where the passengers are terrified with the shaking of the engine, and then the captain comes on and says, "Pray for us." That was a fail.
Either the mile-high prayers or the design and testing of the Trent 772 engine on the right-hand wing does the job for the remainder of the flight. Mitch and Damien start to relax as the plane approaches Perth, but by now they are praying that the captain will keep his thoughts to himself. Then he pops up with another of his colourful communications.
We are now descending into Perth, and
so when we were approaching the airport, the pilot was pretty standard with his response. We were about to land at Perth Airport, and then he dropped in that we were going to have to brace.
Please do the brace position, lean forward and grab the ankle.
So that was a bit scary because we thought we'd made it by that stage.
And rest your forehead on your arm.
We could see out the window and we could see what was happening, and did see police and fire engines and all those emergency services at the airport. As soon as we landed and touched down, people were just ecstatic. Clapping and cheering and high-fiving, and it sort of continued on for the whole time we taxied along the runway.
The pilot has one final comment for his relieved passengers.
thank God for on the ground.
Thanks a lot.
And maybe you have prayed for us as well. Thank you. 367 hours on board today. 367 lives. Thank you.
And the two teachers have a chance to thank the man whose flying ability has brought them home safely, even if his communication skills left a little to be desired.
The pilot shook everyone's hand as we got off, which we thought was a really nice gesture, and personally I don't blame him. I think he was scared as well, and he obviously didn't follow procedure, but I think it's just one of those things, just human error.
I guess the pilot was a little too honest at times, but in the grand scheme of things, he got us home alive, and I was happy to shake his hand and thank him at the end of the flight.
Insofar as how AirAsia handled it on the ground, we got to the front of the line and there was no one at the desks for about 2 hours.
Just wanted to get it going on our holiday, and it just took forever.
The lads eventually took off for Kuala Lumpur nearly 20 hours after their original departure time. But with no shaking in sight and both engines in working order.
All our friends thought we were crazy for getting on another AirAsia flight. We were just happy to get on another plane and get going. We thought lightning can't strike twice, right?
The holiday was awesome once we got there. Myanmar's a great place, and we did some awesome hiking and trekking and different people with different bits and pieces, and the people were super friendly and certainly worth going. We'd go again.
Oh, don't do this to me.
Our friends and family were more concerned about it than us. We were just like, no, that's just life, get on with it. Like, you can't dwell on what could have happened because it didn't.
And Damien and Mitch have made a good start on drinking the 60 million beers they promised themselves when the future was looking bleak at 20,000 feet.